Hi, so I have an exciting interview today. We are going to talk all things mortgages. That's right. I've got Eric Douglas. He is the branch manager here in St. Augustine, Florida at New American Funding. And you're going to want to stay tuned till the end because he has a program. It's called NAF Cash, where you can be a cash buyer and you don't even have to sell your house first. And I'm Tiffany Curtner, your trusted Northeast Florida real estate advisor. If you haven't done so yet, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel. And if you have any questions about this video, any questions, comments, please feel free to reach out to me directly. My information is in the description box below. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Eric.
Yes,
first,
ma'am.
Again, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me in.
So the first thing, Eric, what is on everyone's mind? What is happening or what is going on with these interest rates?
Tiffany, I don't think we have enough wine to discuss what's happening with interest rates.
We need another bottle, please.
I think we've obviously been dealing with inflationary pressures kind of all across the market. It ranges everything from, you've heard, cost of eggs to how much milk costs, just everyday stuff. But unfortunately, that affects mortgage interest rates as well. Right. So I think to answer the question as to what's going on, and usually the $100 million question is where are rates going? I think you have to have a little bit of perspective on where we're at, where we've been. So I did, since you asked me to come here today, I did a little bit of research before I came. And so the 6-month rolling average, just by Freddie Mac type statistics that Google AI told me, we've basically been running at about 7% for the last 6 months, right. Plus or minus 30-year fixed mortgage rates. It's obviously going to depend on what your qualifications are. There's going to be different types of programs that are all going to affect that, but that's kind of general industry standard that has been advertised. So, but in broader spectrum, most people have short-term memories and they only remember the 3% that we had 4 years ago. Exactly. And so I did also look up the 50-ish running year average as well. Believe it or not, the 50-year average is still 7.76. Oh, wow. So from going back to about, I think it was 1976, 77, we're still about 0.75% on average less than where that average time frame fell. Okay. 81, which I won't cite it. You and I don't remember that year, but it's that was kind of the peak. So there was basically just over 18.5% was kind of the average for that year, and that was the peak in that span. So part of the reason why we fall at 7.76 over the last 50 odd years is you've got all those numbers averaged in there. I think the good news for buyers is that we will start to see a little bit of reprieve this year. Okay. We've started to see some of the economic indicators coming in that inflation is starting to adjust and tame itself. Mm-hmm. And so obviously that's one of the big drivers that will determine interest rates. A lot of factors kind of pulled in there. So I think from people much smarter than I think if anybody tells you that they have an exact crystal ball, it's exactly, you're probably better off buying a lottery ticket. But I think the educational minds and researchers and kind of industry experts that follow the technical symbols and signals of the mortgage markets are kind of indicating that rates will start falling at some point this year. I don't think 3% is on the horizon. I think it's probably going to be a slow, steady fall over the year to 6-ish. I mean, I think most of us would be happy with the low 6s.
Do you think we'll see 5 in 2025?
As of right now, are we going to make a side wager?
I don't think we will.
I would probably bet that we're not going to see 5 this year. I think it's possible in maybe 2026, going into 2027. However, we have, we all know there's a ton of worldly events happening right now. We just got a new administration in the White House. We're in the midst of confirming all the new congressional seats. Mm-hmm. So, as I've told a lot of clients and my team, and, we've had this conversation, I think we're going to know a lot probably by the end of February,
Okay.
because we're going through different heads confirmations, different cabinet seats. All the congressional seats will be confirmed, and so the policies will actually start to be implemented. And I think once the market gets that direction and people kind of know what policies will look like, we'll probably know a lot by the end of this month.
Okay. And then, so what advice do you have for first-time home buyers?
Well, first is always get it pre-approved, right?
Thank you. Please. Yes. That is huge. Can I just say this? Because when I purchase houses, I just fall in love with something. I'm that person you walk in like, this is it. I love it. And I've heard far too often is someone waits and then they fall in love with the home and they weren't pre-approved or pre-qualified. And I'd like for you to tell the difference between that, please. But then someone swoops in and then the home goes to someone else because they didn't get pre-approved. So please tell us how important that is and what steps they should take.
Yeah, I mean, everybody always wants to do the sexy part. That's the looking at the houses.
Exactly.
My part is kind of like, you have to strip down naked and look in the mirror. Nobody wants to do that, right? For the most part. So the pre-approval, super important because obviously it's going to line up to see what you can actually afford, right?
Right.
If I showed someone or you showed someone $100,000 house and then $1 million house and money was not an object, chances are they're going to pick the $1 million house, right? It's just they're two different houses. It is what it is. So a big part of what we're doing is going through not only what they can afford or qualify for, but probably more importantly is what they want to afford. So we're going through a budgeting conversation, not only just how much can we get them approved for, but how much they actually want to pay per month.
Right.
That's a big one, right? So you and I have a lot of similar interests, but we still live two different lifestyles. So you like your Starbucks in the morning, I'm comfortable making my coffee at home. But that all affects how much money we want to spend per month, right? So you got to accommodate for the Starbucks, I got to accommodate for the Folgers at home. So all that will boil down in terms of how much a family wants to spend on fixed costs, which will be, the house and utilities and all that stuff.
And do you recommend 3 months in advance, at least to get that process rolling?
Yeah, I think at a minimum, I think a minimum 3 months. If so if we're in January, someone's looking to buy, potentially close in March, April, May. I mean, now is the time, right? I think we're in that Amazon-based society, 2-day delivery. Everybody kind of thinks that everything's next day. I think most of the time a house is someone's biggest purchase, right, in their life. So I'm kind of the thought process, the sooner the better. We're not opposed to, if you said, hey, Eric, we're not ready now, but we're looking in maybe 2 years. Maybe we don't have to do a full pre-approval now, but we're never opposed to starting a conversation. I think the more time that you have to plan, the more time it gives you to kind of put different mechanisms in place so that you're comfortable, prepared, ready to go, especially if we kind of wind our way back, rates start to drop and we get into this really competitive environment again. When you have all your ducks in a row, you become very prepared and the chaos seems much more controlled when you're making those big decisions.
And a seller wants to see a pre-qualification versus a pre-approval, correct?
So just flip it around.
Gets me every time.
No worries. So, so 100%. So kind of a big industry fight is always, well, are they pre-qualified or are they pre-approved? In my opinion, we really don't do it. We don't issue pre-qualifications. Pre-qualification is the equivalent of, we'll pick up the bar napkin, write down some information, maybe do a soft credit pull and say, all right, Tiffany, you can buy a house for $500,000. Pre-approval is we're actually going through essentially completing the full application of all your personal information, credit, income, assets. We're documenting it, potentially sending it to an underwriter. So we're kind of getting everything in line that nothing's guaranteed. We have to be careful in this world, right? There's different things that happen, but it's essentially ensuring that if you find a house, collectively between your funds and our funds, you're going to be able to buy the house. So in the pre-approval, we're going to vet out everything, make sure that not only that person or you as the buyer are going to be ready to go. But then ultimately, as you mentioned, we can convey that to the seller or the selling agent that they should not have any concerns accepting their offer because we've done all this back end due diligence.
Okay. And what are some things to do if you're going through the pre-approval process that you should not do?
Yeah, so I think probably pre-approval process all the way up to the day of closing, you're typically trying to stay away from any major financial changes. So don't start buying the furniture before you own the house. We've seen cars, dishwashers, Best Buy is running a 0% sale and take out a new credit card for $50,000. You name it, we've probably seen it. But the idea is that if you're within kind of that 3-month window of being pre-approved, engaged, making offers, all the way up through closing, you're trying to minimize any major financial changes. And sometimes that's as simple as moving money around, right? So we kind of have that conversation with folks as to what accounts they're using, where it's coming from, where it's going, just to make sure that doesn't mean that any issues can't be overcome, but usually the less stress during the home buying process, the better. So we try to have those conversations with everyone just to make sure that we're guiding them along the path to make it as easy as possible.
Very good. And then what different loan programs do you offer?
We don't have enough time for that. No. We're primarily focused on residential mortgage lending. So we're going to encompass all the kind of traditional products most people have heard of. So conventional loans, which are like your Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, very standard guidelines. We'll go into government lending, FHA, VA, USDA. We're always more than happy and excited to work with veterans. We go into jumbos. We have some very specific and tailored program for self-employed folks who may not fit that conventional, traditional qualification mold. And then we've got some investment loans that, if people maybe already own their primary or they're looking to expand out into something else, add additional properties where we can actually treat it a little bit more like a commercial loan where we qualify the property more so than them as people, their personal financials, which can sometimes help, especially if they're trying to build a little bit larger portfolio and stuff like that.
Okay, perfect. And do you do buy downs? I know with these interest rates, do you have different programs for buy downs? And if you do, explain that a little bit.
Sure. So buy downs have become a hot topic, especially around here, right? So much new construction. It's kind of been one of those big teaser pieces that builders are using to pull buyers in, right? Because people see 7, but if they can see 5, makes the numbers a little bit more palatable. So just a quick point of clarification. So a lot of times the builder promos that you'll see out there are what are called temporary buy downs, which means that the rate gets bought down for a set period of time, typically 1, 2, or 3 years. I won't go too much into the details on that. If obviously they can reach out to you or myself if they have questions. Or sometimes, depending on what the allocated funds are, potential seller credits, sometimes we can do a permanent buy down, like a fixed buy down on the rate. So sometimes not as dramatic as the temporary buy downs, but it also gives you the comfort level that it will stay the same rate for the entirety of the loan. So we do offer both, and we're able to do that because we service a lot of our own loans post-closing. And so, yes, to answer your question, we offer those.
Okay, great. And then I know we've been talking a lot about buyers. What about when you have someone sitting in a home right now, they have another kid, they're locked in at that nice 2 to 3% interest rate, but they want to upgrade. But how can you get them out of that house and get them into an affordable rate?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of different strategies, right? So obviously, I think that one in particular is going to be tough to give a blanket answer to just because typically when people are looking to come out of one residence and go to the next one, there's a lot of life influences and changes that are happening as to why they need to make that move. So I think the principles basically go back to the same, right? Is that we kind of have to figure out where their budget lies. Their rate is obviously important because it affects what that monthly payment's going to look like. But we kind of have to take all those variables and kind of figure out where they can go to. Unfortunately, right now, it's typically, especially if they're upsizing and not downsizing, there's probably going to be some type of payment change. But some of the tools you're just talking about, so we can use buy downs, whether it's temporary or permanent. Sometimes we can leverage the equity that they have. Fortunately in this area, over the last 5 years, I don't even know, maybe you have some stats, but the equity growth in this area has probably been 200, 300, 400%, depending on where it is. So the upside is that even though people have these really good interest rates, if they do have a life change where they've got to make a move, sometimes we can leverage those different components, and equity can come into play too, or sometimes maybe we can do some debt balancing, right? Sometimes maybe people have 2 years left on cars that they're planning on buying. Maybe we use some of the equity to pay that off to kind of offset the payments a little bit. And then if our predictions were correct in the beginning and we hit 2026, 2027, maybe they refinance at that point and kind of bring everything back in check. So if they got to get new cars at that point, it'll all balance out. So those are some of the conversations. That's what I mean by tailored answers, right? So I think it all depends on what each individual family is ultimately looking to do and accomplish. And then we can kind of look at what's on the table and try to bring some of the solutions back to the table.
Okay. You brought up refinancing. How much will refinancing usually cost you, and when is a good time to do so?
So again, it's going to depend on the loan size and the property, where it is, right? Because obviously we have state taxes in Florida. So I would say this again. We're not gonna ink this and grant it anywhere, but it's usually somewhere between, I'd say, $3,000 and $4,500.
Okay.
It's kind of like sunk costs, right? Because we can transfer escrows and kind of offset. You're not going to reestablish or double pay taxes, right? So those will all kind of wash out. The one thing I will say though is that if again our predictions are correct, my guess is, based on the last couple of cycles where we've gone through this roller coaster of rates rising and then coming back down, one of the unique things that tends to happen with the yield curve is that we also get an opportunity to actually do that no points, no closing that a lot of people have heard of. So as opposed to people paying that, say, $3,000 to $4,500 in fees, we as the lender can actually cover that for them. And so especially in the case of, let's say, the years from 2019 to 2022, in a lot of instances, because we had such large market movements over those years, we might have done that two or even three times for folks because they were coming down from people don't remember this, but we were at one point 6, 7, 8% in the 2000s realm. And so those people were able to ride the wave down to the 3%. And so you obviously try to lock in, if you can get good savings, maybe reduce the term of the loan. There's always opportunities for that.
Yeah, nice. Take it, glass.
All right.
I need a drink.
Cheers.
This wine is delicious.
Only the best for you.
Oh, thank you. So Eric, do you have a success story you could tell us about?
Sure. Well, we have a lot of success stories, right?
Sure.
Every time someone closes, it's a success story.
That's true.
So I will give you one quick story. So this was actually a Christmas story. So super nice woman. And I tell this story a little bit too, just because I think sometimes people think if they've had adverse financial events in the past that they can't ever buy a house again, or it's going to be a super long time or whatever. So anyway, super nice woman, single mom, couple kids, and unfortunately she had a variety of life events, one of which included a bankruptcy. And so she had started with a couple other lenders. It was actually a new construction purchase, and the in-house construction lender could not get the financing done. She was actually supposed to close in the beginning of December. And so by the time we had rolled up, and it was already past Thanksgiving, so it was a pretty short timeline. In any event, there was a couple hurdles that we had to kind of get over just because of a couple events that had happened in the past. But overall, she was very strong, very well qualified. It's just that there was some history there. And so, long story short, the builder actually ended up having a couple delays. So the way that it ended up falling is with the final inspections and everything, she was supposed to close on Christmas Eve. So it's one of those stories. There's a lot of different challenges getting the appraisal done because the property wasn't ready and so on and so forth. But long and short, Christmas Eve, 11 a.m., she got on record. Her boys went to the Christmas tree farm, got the tree, and that became the experience for Christmas Eve as they set up the tree, unpacked the ornaments, kind of did that whole jam.
Amazing.
And so, most new clients always joke like you can have pizza and camping chairs on the living room floor, right, until the movers get there. And so this one was pretty cool. So they had, pizza, camping chairs, and Christmas tree. So they were super excited. But that was a big win this year because she was a super nice lady, and she had been through I think 2 or 3 lenders by the time she got to us. And so I guess actually testament to my team because it was only one lender that we found in the entire country that would do it, and we ended up having to broker that, but we got it done, and it was on time, in for Christmas, so it was pretty cool. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so now is the time, Eric, will you please explain your NAF Cash program?
Sure. So over the last couple of years, we kind of already talked about it, right? So we'll call it the COVID years. Market kind of got turned on its head. Everybody was looking for larger homes. Equity was appreciating. But what's happening is there was a ton of cash in the market, right? Because people's homes had appreciated and they were sitting, as soon as they sold their house, they were sitting on a bunch of cash, or maybe they did really well in the markets or wherever the cash was coming from. Family, friends, I don't know. But there was a lot of cash in the market. So what we were finding is we had all these buyers that were out in the market, and they were losing out because they had financing contingencies, a home to sell, a couple other challenges, but ultimately it wasn't cash. So New American, our owner, one of the owners, Rick, him and his wife worked with a couple of us branches, and we basically came up with a sister company called NAF Cash. And so, as you know, and we've kind of worked on this, is that we will now turn a buyer into a cash buyer. So we will actually physically go out, client identifies the property, what they want to pay for the property. There's a qualification process obviously built in there. But assuming they qualify, they identify the house, and we will buy that house cash for them, let them move into the house immediately. And then if it's a first-time home buyer, we obviously, a couple constraints where typically in cash, you can't do an appraisal before you own the house, right? So as soon as we own the house, we'll have the appraisal done. First-time home buyers, probably they're owning the house of record, probably 7 to 10 days thereafter we close. If you have a situation, maybe it's like my family, 3 kids, trying to tame everybody to do a move, maybe you want a little bit longer time, right? To be able to kind of stage the current house and get into the new house before you got to deal with open houses and all that stuff. So what we'll allow you to do is move in immediately. You take care of listing their house, hopefully within 7 to 10 days thereafter. Or they could list simultaneously, depending on, maybe they're not my house where my kids destroy everything, but their house is always neat, so they can list simultaneously. But as soon as their house closes, then we'll complete the transaction. But the primary benefits are you get the leverage of being cash, right? So typically on the negotiating side, you're going to get a little bit more leverage. At very worst, you can compete with other cash offers. You don't necessarily have to have the home sale contingency. There's no change really in any way on the actual end financing they're going to get. So if they were going to get a traditional 30-year fixed, we don't add on any cost or fees to that. There is a cost to doing the program. It's state specific, so it's probably better off they reach out to us to kind of talk those details. But based on my experience and my team, I think I told you this, but I'm not sure. We were actually the 5th largest user of the program in the country last year. So the other top three, we're not counting them. They were built into different teams,
Okay.
and this was like our team. So I'm like, we were kind of like number 1 or 2.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway,
Nice.
so just saying that for competitive purposes.
Yeah, no, I get it.
But so we have used this program a lot, and so what I've seen statistically is that either by convenience or cost, I think most clients that end up either wanting or having to use this program really end up coming out ahead from a variety of perspectives, whether it's negotiation wise or just not totally losing your head moving, right?
Yeah,
like
no, it's the
trying to simultaneously move from one property to the next is probably one of the hardest things in the world.
The peace of mind.
Yes.
Worth it.
So that's been our sleeping giant. We're one of the few companies that is out there that does this setup. There's some others that I think are a little bit higher cost and some other things, but it's really been a great program for a lot of clients to be able to get into homes and compete, most importantly, with what's out there in the market. I'll give you one last one
Please
on
do.
this, right?
Yeah.
Because we do live in the land of new construction, right? Like, so I just heard there's another 15,000 homes going up
crazy.
across the street. So where we've also seen some success with this is, let's say you're going to new construction, and maybe you have a house to sell. Well, what happens if your buyer falls through? So now you're stuck, right? You've got to go back and potentially go to the builder. Who knows whether they'll keep a deposit, potential upgrades, whatever. So we've actually leveraged this a lot with new construction now as well. So house is done. Maybe there's something problematic on the close side, selling their property. And now we become that bridge to get them still into the house they design, love, and that just buys them a little bit more time to get the next buyer.
Yeah, that is great. Well, Eric, so that is amazing. If you have any questions or comments on this interview about NAF Cash, about working with Eric or working with myself, my information is in the description box below. You can call, text, or book a time on my calendar. And if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. That will motivate me to put out more great content. And Eric and I have been discussing this. I think this will be a usual Monday. What is it, Eric? Monday masterclass.
Monday mortgage mastery.
Yeah,
right?
So we're going to keep this going.
But we're going to do it from the golf cart, right?
Oh, yeah. So I love this setting. But yeah, we're going to be out and about Palencia on the golf cart. Yep. Maybe a different drink. I like my wine, though. We'll see.
Yeah, all right.
So thank you so much for watching. Have a beautiful day, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers. Thank you again,
Cheers.
Eric. This was so much fun.
Thanks for having me. This is great.